right, next I'd like to welcome our second keynote speaker of the day. It is Doria Robinson. Doria, are you up here? I see her, she's moving. Doria is the executive director and board member of Urban Tilth, also a Richmond City Council member. And we are looking forward. And she brought her own laptop. Look out, everybody.
Right. First, I just wanted to say thank you for having me. It's been a tough week. Lots of things happening, so I also want to just ask for your grace if I stumble a little bit today, because it has been a tough week. And then I want to just say thank you and acknowledge some folks for a second. The amazing team that really does the watershed work that Urban Tilth does is here today. They're sitting at the table here, and if you guys could stand up for just for a minute, they're the ones, come on. They're the ones who really make the work come alive and are out, learning the plants, sharing the knowledge with their neighbors and their friends in the mud, in the dirt, dealing with invasive species and learning how to do water conservation so we can bring that to the work as well. There's Paola in the back too. She's not getting the love that she needs. I think it's really important that we recognize the people on the ground doing the hard day in and day out work to restore the watersheds that we talk about and the spaces that we care for. So, when I was asked to give this talk, I was like, do you really want me? Why? And started to think about what is it that I could possibly bring to an audience, this particular audience. What is it that we've learned over the last 18 years doing this work? And I feel like this kernel that I hope to share today is really about this notion of relationship being the most powerful resilience. And I'm going to get into it a lot. I'm going to talk a lot about farming first. And then I'm going to get to the watershed part. So, who am I? I'm Doria. I was born and raised in Richmond. I'm a lifetime Richmond resident, born in the hood in the Iron Triangle, and the place that I represent today. It's just blocks from the Chevron refinery. That was my view out of my window, the Chevron refinery. But a lot of people don't know that I also was a part of a big church community that had a ranch and has a ranch in Fairfield, California. It's 300 acres, grew up there on weekends. So between the two places, I had a really interesting kind of upbringing where my grandfather and all the folks that came up from the South, from Louisiana, had this ethic of land that was really ingrained with us. We always came back to the ranch and we did it together. 17 families bought that land together and still own it together in a trust. There's creeks that run through that. We did, work on that creek. we did all of the work there ourselves. Everything was kind of wind powered and all these things. And I really took it for granted how much of a lesson it was to grow up both in the hood of Richmond, where people were literally getting shot every day on my block, and in this other place where we'd sit on the barn and watch the sunset, where we'd watch horses being born and be a part of it, where it was up to us to really care for things when it was a big storm, when it was, different things that would happen. The fear of fire, all these things came down to us in our hands and our relationship to land and what we needed to know to be good stewards. And I think that when I started off, in work, I wanted people to have that relationship. I wanted the people that I grew up with who couldn't go to the ranch on the weekends like I did, to have that relationship with land, not just the concrete and their block, and all you know is the block, and you don't go anywhere but Richmond, And so I felt like, I want to open that up for people, So I got a job with the Watershed Project, and started doing creek restoration work actually in East Oakland at Arroyo Viejo Creek, with that particular purpose of trying to connect people in East Oakland with this daylighted creek. And just learned so many things, that there was so much money available for these capital projects, to do these projects, to lay down, kind of smack these projects down in the middle of communities, but no money for maintaining them. And we act like because we're putting native plants in the ground that they're gonna magically grow a mini forest that can, take care of itself because it's native, in this little island of planting, and just learned so many lessons about how we need to be conscious of being in cities, how we need to take care of land and what does and doesn't work. But I also learned that people do benefit from being connected to even those little slivers and islands of land. It was with the Watershed project that I was actually doing a native plant garden thing on the Richmond Greenway and heard about this crazy guy named Park Guthrie, what a name, who had a vision for the Richmond Greenway that, this former creek that ran right through the spine of Richmond, former, before that, a railway track, could be so much more. Instead of being the dividing line between warring gang territories, that it actually could be a place where people gathered and come together 23 blocks long and actually learn about nature. Like, take away the pavement, bring the nature back, have it be a place where people gather. And that was such a compelling vision for me that I was like, I'm in. And I literally started volunteering, first volunteering with Urban Tilth every Saturday, every second Saturday. That was 18 years ago. I became the executive director pretty soon after that. Running a nonprofit isn't easy, very stressful, and it's not for everybody. And over the last 18 years, we've gone from this one vision of a all-berry garden on a former creek to 7 different locations where we manage 5 gardens, an urban farm that's now 10 acres, multiple creek restoration projects, 9 programs. And we are 65 people employed year-round, doing 9 programs of work. It's a lot. It's all of us. I think one of the major magic pieces of this is most of the people that work for Urban Tilth actually live right in Richmond, from Richmond, or a community very similar. And the work that they're doing is so much more than hitting a time clock, It's actually caring for their home, their backyard, the place where they grew up, their elementary school, their high school, where they just graduated from. Passing on the information that they get and the information that they gain through our programs, it becomes a life mission for many. Not for all, it's not perfect, but for many. And it's pretty powerful, and this is a part of what I'm hoping I can share today. So I think that at the heart of our work, it's really that we center both people and place. And I think that a lot of the work that I had been involved in before coming to Urban Tilth, it would center place. And really leave the people out. Maybe people were extra arms and legs, and some volunteers, but not really center people in the equation, in the answer for what it is that we're looking for. And I feel like really big missed opportunity. So some of the things that we do, just to give you a sense of scale, because when I circle back to watersheds, I want to make sure you understand the potential for impact. So this is part of the Greenway Gardens. Like I said, they're 23 blocks long. We manage about 4 blocks of it. There's raised bed gardens on 2 blocks, and an edible forest that's a whole block, and a few native plant gardens, and some other work. Multiple groups do projects out there. This is just our work. We host 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this space. That was just vacant. 42 community events each year in this spa nothing happening there. Those events include environmental education, stewardship, positive social experiences. We also have 2 intensive education programs at 2 schools in Richmond, a Verde Elementary School, where we teach over 17 classes every week to all the kids at the school, as well as Richmond High School, where over the last 13 years, we've taught a comprehensive elective course in American agriculture, urban agriculture and American food systems, as an elective to 40 kids for a year. Now there's 2 classes, so it's 80 kids for a year. There's going to be a 3rd class that's coming as well for English language learners. And a part of that is not just teaching about, how do you grow food and what's the history of agriculture in America and how we transitioned from, the small family farms to these industrial farms and the impact of all that on the landscape and the water and whatnot, but we also literally have whole sessions, whole segments on watershed education. What is a watershed? How are you implicated? Where does urban runoff? How do all these things interconnect? So, over 13 years of touching students for a full year with this kind of programming makes impact. So students learn so much more even about the food they grow, the food that they offer to other students. So the food that they grow in the gardens, they actually offer it in a free farm stand for students and parents and everyone. So it actually gets out, people eat the food, which surprisingly, when you actually eat what you're growing, you don't just kind of ooh and ah at it in the garden, you become really concerned about things like what's in the air, what's in the water, how we're taking care of things, right? Because it's going into your body. And that was one of the things that we learned, that the more we're in relationship, the more we're interdependent, the more people care. These are high school students now, but 13 years into the future, they're voters. So, we extend that relationship with students. It's pretty deep, being with them an hour every day, going on these long journeys with field trips and visitors and everything. But we extend it even further in our summer apprentice program, where we take in, 40 youth all summer, 6 weeks intensive, 5 different crews of young people. Again, going deeper, but deeper together, making relationships with each other, because there's such a profound sense of isolation in our communities. And so, how do we do this work? How do we truly restore land and water without thinking about what I think is the true course of the need to restore, which is our human beings. We are the ones who have made the impact. We're the ones who kind of have this brokenness, the way that we interact with the environment. We can't restore the land in a really permanent, resilient way until we also restore ourselves. So this is a part of what some of this work is doing, right? That's why we go so deep. That's why we're focusing so deep. Why we're creating relationships. Why it's not good enough to only talk about, things that you look and go ooh and ah about, native plants. They're cool, they have these histories, they have these stories, but also to actually extend ourselves and to be interdependent, to say that, we're going to actually figure out how to sustainably farm and grow things from this soil, from this water, and how we can be in relationship and take only enough so we don't harm. And so that we can actually fulfill some of the needs in our community, because in Richmond, there's a huge need for healthy food. We also have a number of different free farm stands that happen every week that serve about 50 families at each one from the food that we grow. And yeah, I think one of the things that we really learned is that, we seek to empower people to take back their health and their joy by reconnecting with land. So it's not just a handout at a food bank, which is good, especially in emergencies, but it's actually a point of connection for people who are isolated, for people who feel devalued, for people who feel like nobody cares about them, for people who want to understand how they can make a better impact on their health. And then those people learn that, oh, this food came from land. There's ways that I can get involved in stewarding that land. There's ways to properly steward that land. Let me learn more. So we have this central kind of concept that the health of the people is inextricably connected to the land, and the health of the land is inextricably connected to the health of the people. And just so you know, I didn't come up with that. That was Nathan. But I just know it's so true. When you look at a community that is dumped on and blighted, and the creeks are dumped on and blighted, the people in that community are dumped on and blighted. Like, we're all actually the victim of the same phenomena manifesting in different ways. And if you can both, take time to clean the stuff out of the creek, but while you do it, help the people heal and restore, that creek will stay clean, or at least over time, clean. Over time, over generations, right? This is a long game that we're playing. And so I wanted to just share a few stories and then kind of transition into the watershed work, and you can see what I'm talking about and why I think this is an important point to make. And this is a picture of the North Richmond farm, one of our major projects. It's an old county flood control property that we started 8-9 years ago now. We were leasing the land from Contra Costa County and trying to restore it so that we can start a farm on it. It was literally between San Pablo Creek, Wildcat Creek, and the floodplain. It's an amazing history. It's a rich cultural site. But for 40 years, it was abandoned and just basically a de facto dump. So when we took, a few years to clean it up, and we got to a point where we wanted to plant the orchard there, so we invited 100 people to come and help us plant the orchard. We split them up into 10 teams of 10 people. Each team worked together to plant a series of 2 or 3 trees. And through that process, of a couple hours, people were talking to each other who would never, ever talk to each other. They would never cross paths. They kind of figured out who was going to do what. They shared, divided roles and responsibilities and taught each other with things that they didn't know how to do. When they planted the trees, some of the people named the trees after people they cared about. And I think the magical thing is that to this day, some of the people who helped plant those trees, come back, they volunteer, they visit their tree, and they see what's going on. They know the name. They'll tell other people the name. And there is a relationship with that day, with those groups of people, with that soil, with that tree, with that person's backstory of why they named that person the tree. That is profound. That is profound. They will keep coming back as long as they can. We have people who've moved across the country and send emails. Like, how's it going? Is this thing still happening? I wish I was still there. I see your posts. If I'm ever back in the Bay, I'm going to be there. I argue that it's this kind of relationships that we should be fostering in the work that we do. Not just getting the work done. Because we're not getting the work done if we're just getting the work done. Everyone has seen a beautiful restoration project go in, and it looks so great the first year. And then you come back a couple of years later and you can barely find it. Maybe the trees are good, But I feel like this is the work that we should really, really be doing. So getting more people with their hands in the soil so they can experience that sense of well-being, that sense of connecting to people and places, gives community members a personal stake in the success of the land. A personal stake. Like it matters to them that this thing is successful. Again, another kind of example, I want to just walk through kind of more of what's happening at the North Richmond farm. This great space, 3 acres, we just purchased 7 more, so now it's 10 acres. The neighboring property of the Nevada farm is now part of the farm, which is really great. It started off like this, literally not much happening. Intersection of Fred Jackson and Brookside Drive, lots and lots of invasive species. That's pretty much what it was. And when we started to clear away the 100 feet long, 10 feet tall blackberry, we found all kinds of trash and stuff dumped in there and kind of cleaned it up and, just literally a dumping ground, right? Between our creeks, like literally next to the creek. And today it's this. This is the beginning of the North Richmond farm. Part of it, not the full vision, but, we're growing tons of crops with people on the land, all organic, no chemicals, teaching people how to do this kind of work without the use of petrochemicals, without the use of things that will strip or the land. We've even gotten to the point where we're doing no-till and really trying to reconnect the ecosystems in the soil so that they can help us do what we need to do, which was, grow the healthiest food possible considering our circumstances. By making this commitment to the land and bringing people back to the land, we have over 15 local people employed to harvest that food, pack that food, wash that food, and get it out to over 500 families every week who get food from our farm, as well as 10 partner farmers who are also growing sustainably within 100 miles of Richmond. These are BIPOC farmers. Really doing amazing work. Some of them used to be farm workers who've transitioned to wanting to do organic farming because they've seen the impact of the petrochemicals on their own bodies, and they wanted something different. We're able to share that story with the 500 people who received the food, right? We actually put things in their bags, little messages about why it's important the way that we're growing. When there's an opportunity to volunteer and come out and help with a creek or help with a whatever, how them getting food from us shortens supply chains and limits the amount of food miles that are going up into the atmosphere. Real outcomes by just looking at an issue in a different way and reconnecting people with land. The whole vision of the project is this. It's not the whole vision now because we actually purchased everything that's wet, that's east as well. All those greenhouses and everything are now part of the project. And we're gonna go through a process to figure out what happens there. But our vision is really to create this opportunity by reimagining and caring for land and developing infrastructure that's aligned with sustainable practices and create opportunities for people to be directly engaged in the transformation while creating meaningful employment. I can't tell you just how deeply I believe that all of the folks that are being touched by this work in all the different ways, the potential impact. Many of these people won't stay with us forever, but they've got these seeds inside of them. They're not going to be satisfied with working at Walmart, or Taco Bell, right? They've got these seeds inside of them, and they want to make this kind of change ongoing everywhere. They understand that when they showed up, when they showed up for that volunteer day, for their job, for whatever, they made transformational change. They fed people. They created places where didn't exist for people to come together and talk to people who would talk to each other who never talked before. They understand the power of their own participation in transforming the spaces that we have to care for, that we should be caring for as a people, not just the agencies that are supposed to be responsible for these things. So, in order to foster true resilience, along with innovative engineering that looks at collaboration with natural food systems, people must be a part of the answer. So our Watersheds crew gave little props to everybody here. You know, so these folks are doing amazing work on a daily basis. They, as well as our Basins of Relations, which is a training program we have, we run it every 2 years, so apprentices who are learning how to do watershed restoration and recognize native plants, grow native plants, do all kinds of erosion control and other things. And most recently, we've added a discipline where we're going to be actually doing a lot of water conservation work for low-income families, creating landscape systems, converting low-income families in Richmond to drip irrigation if they have any kind of plantings in their yards, as well as possibly doing some water catchment for them, recognizing that we live in a drought state and that we should be doing better with our water. So they also take care of a number of different locations, help to maintain and restore creeks within the East Bay Regional Parks District, along Wildcat Creek, with the City of Albany, with the City of Richmond, and with the Contra Costa Flood Control District. This program didn't exist 10 years ago. There weren't people from North Richmond, Pinole, being trained to do this kind of work. It was actually a rarefied space. You never even heard about it in a Richmond high school. You know, and I'll ever hear about that you could be a watershed restoration technician. No. Like, this is not a thing, right? And so having this as a possibility for folks makes it a whole other world open, right? Because it's not just those people who are in the program, not just these people who are in the program, but everyone they're connected to, right? All their families, all their friends, all the people, like the ideas of caring for land as a calling, as an occupation. I want to dip into a couple of this one project, and then kind of end after this. So one of the projects that we did recently that we're really proud of is kind of expanded the work that we had been doing, just doing kind of revegetation and kind of caring for existing restoration sites. We took on a green infrastructure project next to the farm, which was transforming these open ditches that ran to both creeks, San Pablo Creek and Wildcat Creek, into rain gardens along the stretch. So we actually worked together as a part of the First Mile, Last Mile project in the Contra Costa County and the Watershed project, and got some funding to do this work. And, you know, worked with RDG, great partners, great. There are great partners out there who understand how to work with community groups in a way that's honest and genuine and open. And they bring their expertise so that we can do really magical work together. And I just want to big up folks like RDG who bring that kind of brilliance and wisdom to the work. So, you know, we did a little rain garden project. And I think that there's so many ways that this could have been done. Well, actually, one other way that mostly these projects are done. You know, usually, you have your consultant, and they hire some crew, and it's like a, landscaper, contractor, and they come in and they plop everything in, and they walk away from it, and then it's done. Nobody's connected to nothing. Maybe people drive by and go, oh, that's different. But, this is a place where we have been cleaning it up 4 times a year because there's so much dumping. So many, people throwing couches and oil and dogs and all kinds of things in these ditches over the last 8 years. And so this was not just about, wanting the water that gets to our creeks to be clean, but we're also like, this is a dumping ground that needs to be stopped, And there's no sidewalk. People can't get to the farm. They have to walk in the street. There's no bike lane. You can take your life in your own hands if you don't want to drive a car. So we wrapped all that stuff up, worked with RDG, made this project, but when it came to installing it, we did this. Brought people. And we all planted it together as a part of Martin Luther King National Day of Service, right? Because this is meaningful, what we're doing. This isn't the city's, the county's problem. This is us. This is our problem. This is our space. This is our solution. During that day, the team led beautiful talks on each and every plant and what their role was, what it had been used for, so they can recognize them again if they're out taking a hike somewhere, encouraging people to take hikes somewhere. People talked to each other. We had some food. It was beautiful. People still talk to me about that day out in other places. They drive by and wonder how it's doing. How's it doing? Really does matter. Not just what we do, but how we do it and who we do it with. So, we really believe this approach of leaning into people and relationship really works for us. It should be the rule, not the exception to the rule. And I'm so glad to be speaking with you today because a lot of you all in this room are doing the work and can help grow this shift, right? Grow this shift in relationship to land. So, there's amazing projects that are coming forward. There's this beautiful Living Levee project. It's a huge project. What is the potential for reconnecting people on a long-term basis to land on this scale? From the beginning, how are we designing and building and maintaining these projects and setting a new standard for implementation that from the beginning incorporates the people who are around it as stewards, envisioning them into the space, making sure they have a space where they have a personal connection to the work, not just hiring the contractor, getting it done and getting it out of there, because what that gets you is 2 years, 3 years down the line, it's dilapidated kind of mess, right? People don't really care about, many people don't even know about. So, I feel like I have a huge opportunity here to really rethink our work, to ask ourselves a few questions, If real resilience is rooted in relationships, we know that when we talk about diversity, when we talk about, diversity of plant communities, when we talk about how water works, above ground, underground, how it's connected to climate, we know all these things are related, and we need to lean into those relationships when we're responding to the challenges of climate change, and we're responding to all these things. And so we have to ask ourselves questions. What are our relationships? How can we nurture them? How can we center them in our work and not have them be an afterthought? Like, oh, I need to get some volunteers. Let me call the local group. But how can we center them first? How do we lean into our vision of what's possible in this sector to center people and think about ways where we can also center health? How do we answer the things, how do we put in our work the things that people are already struggling with, right? If they're already struggling with getting more exercise or being able to get outside or having some kind of a positive health, how can we marry those things and stack functions so they're not being isolated, right? They're not feeling alone in their homes or in their families, where they can come out and they can get all these things while taking care of land together. So how can you make sure that in the design of the maintenance or the design of the installation of land management projects that people who live around these projects are included from the beginning to the end? And positive human health outcomes are weaved into those designs at all stages of the project, so community members have a personal stake in their success. I really feel like it seems really simple, but I think it's key. It's key to the kind of work that we have to do, because there is no way we're going to be able to hire enough people to maintain all the spaces in the way that we need it, especially when you think about what's coming in terms of climate change and what we're going to need in order to buffer ourselves from rising tides, in order to make sure that we don't have those heat islands. You know, we need massive urban forests. And no city team is going to be able to take care of those thousands and thousands of trees. We actually need everyone to feel like they have a personal stake in the success of these projects, because they do. We all do. You know? Like climate change, I'm sorry to say it if everyone hasn't gotten this message yet, but it's real. And there's no way that we can leave that work all set of people. So my invitation is for everyone to just ask those questions, and don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You do what you can for where you are. But I really believe that that's the kind of thing that can help us, live the better lives. Everyone live better lives, lives that are more meaningful, lives where we're connected to each other, lives where it feels like it mattered that we showed up, lives where our creeks are places that we want to go on our off time and not just a dump. That's my offering today. Thank you so much.